private school growth in order to foster universal literacy. Obviously, it was clear that the government institutions were not enough to bring about universal literacy, and so the private sector came in to help. And the Millennium Development Goals set the agenda for the attainment of universal literacy by 2015, primarily to be delivered by the state sector. 2015 is gone. Did we achieve that? We haven't. We don't have universal literacy in Pakistan today, which simply means that all individuals, 100%, that's universal, are not literate in this country. And for any nation to claim 100% literacy is a daunting task. If we are at 90, 92, 95, we may be pretty good. Close to 100 would be fine. But for any nation to claim 100% literacy would be a far cry. And who was supposed to be responsible for this universal literacy by 2015? The state sector, the government sector was supposed to be responsible. Obviously, this was not possible by the government sector alone. And so the private sector stepped in, and then we saw the mushrooming of private schools, more campuses, more new private schools opening up, more franchises of private schools coming about. The private sector, I think, has played a far better role in promoting literacy than the government sector has, for whatever reasons. But when this responsibility was primarily of the government, where did the government fail? Again, I think there are three reasons. One, guidelines. Where were the guidelines? How was this to be achieved in 2015? At the millennium, at the turn of the millennium, that was 15 years time span. Did we have 3 5-year plans for how we were going to get to this universal literacy by 2015? Did we have a yearly target for each 5-year plan? The guidelines were missing. Second, who was going to deliver all this? Schools, colleges, universities, institutions, government, private sector. Who was going to do it? Where were these people? Where was the human resource needed to do this? And number three, where were the facilities? People can't go to people's homes and individually make them literate. That's a daunting task. That's not possible at all. So where were they supposed to gather individuals? When were they supposed to gather individuals? Okay, you can say, okay, schools close at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. What about schools in the evening, calling people from homes? Again, you have to understand the cultural setup. In our cultural setup, calling adults and parents in the evening when fathers are returning from work, when mothers have to look after the needs of the father returning from work and all that. Children coming home from school need the attention of the mother who is at home, or the father in the evening. These people are not leaving home in the evening. When were you going to do this? You see, again, guidelines were missing. And that's important. Without guidelines telling someone to go and do something, that something is not automatically going to happen. So we have to think more than once about guidelines. How do we facilitate? Maybe there are people, maybe there was some school, some university, some college interested in doing this. But without guidelines, you can't be successful. This agenda tends to ignore the significant private school growth, with only the government schools made responsible for this, or the government sector made responsible for this. The private sector has mushroomed and developed and progressed way beyond the government sector in terms of providing literate individuals for this nation. Where were they acknowledged? Were they acknowledged? Why were they not acknowledged? Why weren't the government learning from the private sector of what to do? I think recently, when the government has asked the private sector to take over, to adopt their government schools and look after them, that's probably a step in the right direction. Private schools' effect on literacy is stronger among 10 to 14-year-old children, because the private school focuses on elementary education. Once being literate, elementary education, and 10 to 14 years, you are beginning to get into your teens. It's the elementary, which is up to the 6th, 7th, 8th grade level. And that's where the private sector plays a major role, because they provide quality education, or try to provide quality education to the literate masses, making them more successful, more confident, and more able to lead a more productive life for themselves and their future families.